Hi, I'm Peter Haddock and I'm here with Mark Senior from Pointfuse. Mark, you've got a really interesting job because we're talking about how we get all the data and the information from scanning technologies, imagery and things like that into a usable format. And that's what you and the team have been doing. But what I've also talked about to numerous people over the last few years is a lot of models, a lot of things tend to be quite confusing. There's lots of information in there, almost too much information for different people to use in different sort of job roles, like a site manager or an engineer. They need different types of things, don't they? That's part and parcel of what you're doing at Pointfuse because you're bringing everything together. Tell me how it's working and why it's being quite successful.
You're right. You know, the amount of data out there at the moment and reality capture is a big thing here at the show this week. It's about how do you manage that information, how do you get the most from it, your return on investment for that sort of solution. And what we've been doing with Pointfuse is trying to simplify the process by creating meshes that have not only a reduction in the file sizes that make it much easier to share and collaborate with, but also add the intelligence to it. So what we're trying to achieve with creating these segmented meshes that Pointfuse creates is the ability to start to drive out of it, what is that object, where is it, how many have I got? Very simple questions that people tend to ask time and time again that's there within the data but need that information delivered in a format that makes it much easier, and that's what Pointfuse has been developing over the last few years, is to make that process easier for our customers to extract.
So say I'm working on a big building, right? We've got all of this, a refurb project. Yep. We've got all of the scanning stuff, all of the things in there, and basically I want to know how many windows I've got to buy and what the size of the windows and things like that. Is that can I drill down to that?
Can drill down to that sort of level. What Pointfuse is doing is giving that the domain user the tool sets to start to extract that information easier. Now Point Clouds here is obviously there's a lot of companies doing it. That information is very rich, but it's how you extract it efficiently and visually. Most people can look at a mesh model. It has the textures on it. They can recognize objects much easier, and that allows them to then drill in and select certain information. Now, it may be windows, it may be a mechanical room with some piping, some pumps. That classification, based on a lot of the IFC template structure that we put together with it, allows that person to actually not only say what that object is, but it gives that information on where it is. And then once you know that, you can sort of say, well, actually, how many of these pumps do I have in this floor one, for instance. So it's about drilling down and getting that intelligence. It's not always the fine detail. It's normally the high level detail that we need to extract quicker. So I've got some new design for this refurb. What's going to clash, for instance? Well, if I take a Pointfuse model, I can classify the information I need, whether it's structural, whether it's MEP, and I can then do a clash by clash on those objects. So we're not doing a full clash that's giving us lots of points against the design data, but we're giving a much more refined, intelligent clashing. So for instance, in Navisworks, we can then take the model in, run a clash, and that saves time. And it's all about saving time in identifying these issues as early as possible in the process, and that's where the real ROI is for our customers, is that time saving in getting the answers quicker.
Now, one of the things I talked about yesterday was how you actually look at the utilities within a building and a structure, and how you actually make sure you're not drilling holes for the sake of drilling holes. We've all seen, some of the issues with fire. Fundamentally, what we want to do when we're refurbing is we don't want to drill into all of the fire safety measures that are there, and when we do want to do work and we do want to put in new things, we actually want to make sure that's all put back as well, don't we? So there are building safety issues that can be addressed with this sort of solution, and also therefore we see it visually in front of us, but we can manage and engineer solutions around those existing fabrics and voids and things like that as well, can't we?
The technology is fantastic at capturing this information very quickly. And it's about how do we then utilize that data more frequently so that you are, and I know it's used a lot creating a digital twin, but that digital twin is absolutely a snapshot in time. Now what we can do is from that information, you then, if you're looking at, say, a change in later on in the operation of that building, having this sort of golden thread of information all the way through allows you to go back at any point to see what's there. Now, obviously, we can't always knock down all the walls to see what's behind them. But
absolutely.
If we are in a process where, for instance, new build, if we can promote more regular scanning on a project, that means we scan before the drywall goes up. You're then capturing that information through through the phases of the project. Not only do you then start to build up a really accurate as-built stroke digital twin of that workflow process, but that information can be then handed on and the operations side as well. So later on, it completes a sort of life cycle of how we use data. And I think at the moment it's been very disjointed. And we're now seeing through the Building Safety Act, we're now having to bring these processes together and actually think about it as a much more joined up process in how we work with information and data and how we provide it to everybody. Who needs access to it. And it's an important next step of this workflow, basically.
And this is why it's so important to come to shows like this, because when you discover that is a thing that is on the agenda for the future of the industry, you can say to everybody within your whole structure of how you work on a project from start to finish, from design model all the way through that structure. And the technology's there now in the scanning capabilities. I mean, we've seen the BLK to go with Leica Geosystems as a handheld tool. Very, very simple to walk around a whole structure, isn't it? To capture that data at a high level of resolution. And so that is now possible and affordable to actually do what you said, those more regular checks from the fabric, from the framework, from the utilities, then to the drywall, so we all can see that layered approach through a mesh, so putting it all together, like you're saying, in that context.
Our partnership with Leica Geosystem in looking to provide more efficient workflows for their users, and using the technology better as well. So, for instance, with the RT360, we can start to do not only scanning, but we can start to use the Field 360 app to then start to tag information. So making sure you minimise or maximise the time on site. So, for instance, I can tag a lag pipe, for instance, and that information goes through the whole jet stream or ecosystem. So by the time it gets to Pointfuse, we can take that information and automatically start to classify objects based on that workflow in the field. So you're joining up the real field to office workflow much better. And that's through working with Leica Geosystems and their technology and looking at the workflows that Pointfuse has got and bringing them together into a more coherent solution for people. But you're right, things like the BLK to go now is disrupting that, because you have the ability now to sort of capture this information much quicker, have the flexibility of where you go with that information. So bringing all these technologies together, it's a very interesting time within the industry.
Well, it's fantastic to learn about these sort of things and the capabilities, and also understand how it all works and fuses together every point on that element there. And I think it's really exciting to see how we can take that information, put it into a usable format, and actually through the whole life of a structure, whether it's new build, whether it's refurbishment, and then when it's demolition, we know what's behind the walls, we can rip everything out in a safe way, but also we can hopefully recuperate a lot of those resources, and maybe 100% of those resources, to make it a more sustainable approach for the whole construction end-to-end process. Great to meet you. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Peter.